You know, one of the rumors that I don't remember which journalist it was, started about me was that I somehow walked up to the front gate of the agency, pinged on the door and said, you know, there's torturing to be done, let me in.
I'm in Central Florida and I'm on my way to meet Jim Mitchell, who, according to numerous media outlets and several investigations, was the architect of the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program, the program that was used to interrogate suspects like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Abu Zubaydah in the global war on terror. And so right now we're headed to this river called the Mayaca River, where Jim likes to hang out, fish, and look for alligators.
The plan.
Morning.
Hi, how are you guys? Good to see you.
How often do you come out here?
Yeah, 4 times, 5 times a year. I like the wilderness area a lot.
Jim, what is this place?
This is Deep Hole on the Mayaca River in the Mayaca River State Park.
Jim, you're the psychologist, but would some people think there's something crazy about your relaxation is paddling out among hundreds of alligators?
No, I don't think so. Seems perfectly normal to me. In fact, I think it's a sign of great intelligence. You know, there's just nothing going on. They're not aggressive, they're not dangerous, they're more scared of me than I am of them. And as you can see, there's not another living soul around. So if you're looking for solitude or a place to think, it's just a perfect place. Everybody needs something to organize and structure their thoughts, and whatever's going on in my life is what I'm thinking about normally. You know, everything from gotta mow the lawn to what the hell's wrong with the Senate, you know? Why can't we get a budget or something?
After paddling the Mayaca and dodging alligators for 8 hours, we stopped into Bad Monkey, a bar in Tampa owned by a former special operations general, where spooks and soldiers come to unwind.
I think it would be helpful in order for people to understand your background and your expertise to explain what SEER is and why it's necessary.
Well, the whole point of the SEER program, it stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And the whole point of the program is so that the men and women who are in positions of high risk of capture can serve with honor while they're in captivity and then return with their honor intact. And the training is really focused on helping them avoid providing actionable intelligence to the bad guys and avoid the kind of exploitation that you sometimes see.
And it was a program designed in case our U.S. soldiers
Absolutely.
are captured.
I'm sort of thinking that is well known.
The assertion is that they took all that data and all those principles and all those lessons learned from the SEER program and then reverse engineered it to create the Enhanced Interrogation Program.
That's what Jose Rodriguez says in his book. I mean, I don't recall exactly, but that's the myth anyway.
For more than a decade, the United States has been locked in a fierce debate over the effectiveness of its controversial post-9/11 detention and interrogation policies involving high-value detainees held by the CIA at top-secret black sites. There, captives who included alleged 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, were subjected to a combination of so-called enhanced interrogation techniques, or EITs, that were approved by the Department of Justice in 2002.
These procedures were designed to be safe, to comply with our laws, our Constitution, and our treaty obligations.
The methods, devised from the SEER program, which Mitchell was a part of for over a decade, included sleep deprivation, painful stress positions, wall slamming, and simulated drowning, or waterboarding, the most controversial of all the techniques.
I believe that waterboarding was torture, and I think that whatever legal rationales were used, it was a mistake.
Independent investigations by human rights groups and journalists over the years have helped shed light on how the program worked and whether it prevented terrorist attacks. One name that has continually surfaced in connection with the program is Dr. James Mitchell, a retired Air Force psychologist who was under contract to the CIA. Mitchell has been called the modern-day father of the Air Force's SEER training program and is widely believed to be the architect of the CIA's EIT program. The agency has never confirmed nor denied Mitchell's role in devising the EIT program. But this week, the Senate Intelligence Committee released its long-awaited report on the history of the EIT program. It does confirm that 2 Air Force psychologists devised and managed the EIT program. However, the report stops short of identifying Mitchell by name. We met up with Mitchell in suburban Florida. We spoke to him about the Senate's report, waterboarding, radical Islam, his military background, and one of the darkest chapters of the War on Terror. This is the first time Mitchell has ever appeared on camera. It's been reported in dozens of books and articles and investigations that you were the architect of the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program, also known as EITs, and that you personally were involved with the interrogation and waterboarding of Abu Zubaydah and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Are these reports accurate? And what role did you have in designing the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program?
You know, I'd really like to respond to those questions, but I can't. I have a non-disclosure agreement, and until I'm released from that, I can't answer those kinds of questions. Although I'd like to. I'd love to be able to clarify some of the things that people are saying, because a lot of what people are saying is inaccurate.
The Senate report, it's going to reinvigorate the debate about coercive interrogation techniques. Is that a healthy debate that we should be having?
I think you should have some kind of a debate. I can't believe, we must have an interrogation program that I don't know about. To me, it seems completely insensible that slapping KSM is bad, but sending a Hellfire missile into her family's picnic and killing all their children and, killing Granny and killing everyone is okay for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is, what about that collateral loss of life? And the other one is that if you kill them, you can't question them.
Where do you fall on that debate between hard and soft interrogations?
I think it's a policy decision. I don't have a vested interest in any form of interrogation.
But what do you think works most effectively?
I would say that for 99% of the people who haven't been trained in sophisticated resistance interrogation approaches, some rapport-based program probably works really well for them. I don't really want to go into the details of it, but there will be some people who will withhold information, and some of those will be responsive to coercive. The suggestion that no coercion is ever used by our law enforcement or by the FBI is just silly. And so the first piece of the debate should be, why don't we have an interrogation program at some level? Why are we treating it like a law enforcement matter?
So there's a debate over whether hard interrogations, i.e. the Enhanced Interrogation Program, worked effectively to obtain intelligence information, or whether the soft interrogations, the sort of befriend the person that you're interrogating and get them to reveal information through those techniques.
I don't know that that's the case. Jose Rodriguez in his book Hard Measures and Mark Thiessen in his book Courting Disaster both described the Enhanced Interrogation Program and the purpose of it. And what they said in their books in slightly different language is that the purpose of the Enhanced Interrogation Program was to get the detainee to be willing to engage with a debriefer or a targeter who was asking them a question, and that it wasn't designed so that you would ask questions about actionable intelligence while the detainee was experiencing the Enhanced Interrogation Program. So it's almost like a good cop, bad cop kind of setup, with a really bad cop, so that it was realistic enough that the person would be willing to engage it, if you follow the way they've described it.
You're saying that the design and the purpose of the Enhanced Interrogation Program wasn't necessarily to get actionable intelligence.
It was to facilitate getting actionable intelligence by making a bad cop that was bad enough that the person would engage with the good cop. I would be stunned if they found any kind of evidence to suggest that EITs, as they were being applied, yielded actionable intelligence.
I guess, yeah, if you think like it's 2002, we're starting to snatch up the first round of high-value detainees, and we got to figure out how to interrogate them, right?
There's no point in this conversation.
Oh no, I'm just saying theoretically, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not going to acknowledge that it was me or it wasn't me, but if you read Jose Rodriguez's book, Hard Measures, he says that the contractor that they sent job was to look at the resistance strategies that the detainee was employing and make suggestions to the FBI and CIA team that was there doing the interrogations. And I'm not trying to imply that it's me, I'm just saying that's what he says in his book.
Mitchell's name first surfaced in 2005 in a New Yorker article that highlighted the role of the psychologist in designing the EIT program and its connection to SEER School. Since then, human rights advocates and a congressional committee have tried to hold Mitchell accountable. Joseph Margolis petitioned the Texas State Board of Psychologists to strip Mitchell of his license to practice psychology, claiming Mitchell violated his profession's ethics. Margolis is the lawyer for Abu Zubaydah, a notorious al-Qaeda facilitator who was waterboarded 83 times in 1 month. Zubaydah is the only detainee subjected to all 10 of the EITs Mitchell allegedly developed.
Well, James Mitchell was one of the 2 psychologists who was involved in the creation and implementation of the enhanced interrogation program. They were really the architects. Our position was and remains, there was no foundation in science, there was no foundation in psychology for that, and that James Mitchell misrepresented his skills and his expertise, and that what he engaged in with Zubaydah and others was torture, and that there should be consequences to his license to practice psychology. What he did was wrong. What he did is something no psychologist should ever do. He clearly needs to be held accountable.
This is a Moroccan knife, and that is a cutting stone that I picked up at the edge of the world about 90, maybe 100 kilometers outside of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Is this from when you retired?
Yeah,
from
this is
service?
when I was in the military. You might recognize a couple of the coins.
Yeah, I sure do.
Mitchell's shelves are lined with books on Islam. He started studying the religion after his close friend was kidnapped and murdered.
This is the Sharia law, and you really, if you want to understand not just the Quran, this is the the English translation of the Cairo version of the Quran. If you want to understand the Quran, you have to study the Hadiths, get several of those, but you also have to come here and you have to actually read what they say about how people should be treated. And what I do is I look stuff up that's interesting to me, just to see how they handle it. Like this is the description of how you handle apostasy and what it is and what you do with it. That's John Woo's.
You have John Woo's book on?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've read it.
Yeah.
What do I do?
I mean, most of these books seem to be about understanding Islam.
I got interested in Islam probably around 95, particularly in fundamental Islam. A very good friend of mine named Don Hutchins was captured by Kashmiri separatists under the control of Omar Sheikh, the same guy that kidnapped Daniel Pearl before he turned him over to KSM. They let the women go, but they eventually killed the men. And I started trying to figure out, what is this about? You know, who are these people? I can understand why people would think that, okay, I kind of deserve that sort of treatment if I get rolled up. But Don was the most gentle man on the planet. So even though personally, I don't give a damn whether you worship, what God you worship, which way you face when you worship, what kind of building you worship in, I don't care. But literally, when you want to kill my friends and you want to kill my family and you want to destroy my way of life, you've got my full attention.
How has our understanding of the sort of jihadi mindset increased, say, over the last decade?
They see us as their primary opposition. They think that even if they can't deliver a devastating blow that cripples us, if they continue to do these smaller attacks, that what's going to happen is the public will lose its interest in the thing. A number of studies have been done on jihadists, and one thing that's clear is it's not a mental health disorder. They're not crazy. They're not part of some cult. We tend to think of them as sort of suicidal fanatics, as people who have some kind of problem with their identity and somehow are brainwashed. What I would say is that it's less like becoming a suicidal fanatic and more like becoming a Jedi warrior.
Let's talk about waterboarding. I know a little something about waterboarding.
In 2007, I was the first person waterboarded on national television. At the time, the debate about the use of the technique was uninformed. Some of the politicians arguing for and against it had never even seen it done. So I volunteered to be waterboarded because I wanted the public to see how the technique worked and make up their own minds about whether or not it constituted torture.
Are you getting ready to say something? What do you got to say? What do you have to say?
Yeah, I've been waterboarded too.
Right.
Yeah, and
know
I
a little
saw you.
something?
I saw you waterboarded on a video. I thought I myself, holy cow! Look at what they're doing to that guy. You know, I'm surprised you didn't get up and punch him.
Yeah. Something about those restraints, you know?
Were you restrained? I can't remember.
Yeah. Is waterboarding an effective technique?
I'll give you my experience in the survival school.
Right.
Bruce Jessen and I spent most of our Air Force career trying to get the Navy to stop waterboarding because we thought it did the enemy's job for us. I can't tell you how many POWs I interviewed who said, I'm not going to put up with that. I'll tell them whatever they want to know. I'm not going to go through that again. So if you imagine that the task of a person is to sort of organize and execute the courses of action that are required to protect a piece of information, that technique completely undermined a lot of our fighting men and women's resolve to protect information.
Does waterboarding constitute torture?
Well, we know it didn't in 2001 through about 2006 or 7. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's the wrong thing to do. I think you can do it in a way that it constitutes torture. I think you can do it in a way that it constitutes training. I think you can do it in a way that it helps a person shift their priorities so that they experience less abuse later on. It's like every tool in the tool bag. You can underuse it, you can overuse it.
There's a New York Times article that came out that talked about the treatment of the kidnapped journalists.
Oh, where they said they were waterboarded?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel horrible about that. I really do. But I think the primary responsibility for that lies with the media because the program was classified. They're the ones that spread it out in public, made it a hotbed issue, signaled to the entire world that, you know, that big segments of the U.S. population would be horrified by it. So they kind of highlighted it as something you would want to do, and I'm surprised more people aren't doing it.
Maybe it's because of where I sit, like on the table now, but I take some exception to the idea that the fault lies.
I didn't say all the fault.
Right. Not with the act of doing it.
No, I think it's shared. I think it's 50-50. And do you stop doing something because the bad guys decide to, do we stop shooting people because the bad guys shoot people? To be candid with you, if you're going to break somebody's legs or waterboard them, they probably would prefer you break their legs because it's less distressing, oddly enough. But if you're rescuing them, you would probably prefer they be waterboarded. You could take any technique and turn it into torture, the real torture as legally defined, right? You know, my guess is they did some version of it that was much more horrific than anything that was actually done to the detainees.
Do you think there are red lines in the techniques that we should use to interrogate people?
Sure, I don't think you should do anything that violates the torture convention. I think it's hypocritical when you send a captive to Egypt, or you send a captive to Yemen, or you send a captive to someplace else where they're going to be interrogated by people who are not following U.S. law, whatever it happens to be at the time. They do not question people the way we question people when it comes to actionable intelligence.
Does that also speak to a problem is that people will say anything to stop certain types of harsh interrogations?
You can make people say anything to stop harsh interrogations if you apply them in a way that does that.
The publicly available record is that Mitchell and Jessen reverse engineered skills that they had developed as mock interrogators for the military resistance training program, that is to resist training. They turned that into offensive training techniques to be used for alleged Al-Qaeda suspects. The fact that he says he was qualified doesn't make it so. He never conducted a hostile interrogation in his life. He always worked on phony interrogations, and to represent that he had is simply untrue. We stand by our allegations.
With all the times your name has appeared in the press lately with all these articles, with these investigations. Do you feel in any way that you've been misrepresented or thrown under the bus, or that information about you is not accurate?
I don't feel particularly like I was thrown under the bus. I feel that way about the Democrats in the Senate, right? But I don't feel that way about any of the other organizations that I worked with. I do think that my credentials have been misrepresented. There's a Wikipedia page. If you go to that page, it says I had no experience in special operations, but I had years of experience in special operations. I was in a special mission unit. It says I have no forensic experience. Well, that's not true. I was a bomb tech for 5 years, and what do you think you do as a bomb tech? I was a trained hostage negotiator. I was on the hostage negotiation team. I did sanity board evaluations for the court, critical incident analysis. I went to an aeromedical psychology course where I was trained to do aircraft investigations, psychological autopsies. I was an operational psychologist most of my military career, 13 years, something like 14,000 hours inside the lab. Taught me about the sort of mental states that are associated with interrogation, particularly that using coercive pressure, because we got an opportunity to see a variety of people, all kinds of races, all kinds of intelligence, all kinds of backgrounds, attempting to withhold actionable intelligence. That sort of stuff gets completely misrepresented.
So you have this entire military career, but it's pre 9/11, and then you get out in August of 2001. But you basically thought you were going to retire from the military with your military salary, maybe do some nice contracts, and then September 11th happens, right?
Yeah.
And you remember where you were?
Yeah, I was at home. It was, I still tear up a little bit about that, because to me it was horrific that people had to choose between burning to death or jumping off of buildings. I don't think that should happen to anybody. And so I called one of the people that was managing one of my contracts and said, I want to be part of the solution. Really not knowing anything about anything, other than I just, like everybody who watched that, who had a background in the military, we all wanted to be part of the solution. You could just tell everything had changed.
Right.
For me, it just completely changed my life. At one point in a conversation with a person, I thought somebody ought to do something. I said that out loud to the person, and he said, if give me just a second here. What he said was, if you're not willing to do it, how can we ask anybody else? And I kind of thought back to all those people that died for no reason. And so I was willing to help any way I could. When somebody asked me if I would be willing to help, I was willing to help. So that's where it was. That's where it is.
What do you think when you reflect on the last decade?
I think I wish I had a chance to tell my story, because I think I should be 100% responsible for everything I did. I think I should be 0% responsible for things people dream up that I did.
The Senate Intelligence Committee spent 5 years and $40 million investigating the CIA's enhanced interrogation program. The committee's report concluded that the program was a failure, that the intelligence gleaned from detainees was neither unique nor valuable, and in some cases, exaggerated. Senator Dianne Feinstein, the chairwoman of the committee, said the investigation is one of the most significant oversight efforts in the history of the United States. The committee hopes that its report will finally settle the debate over whether EITs should ever be used again. Mitchell thinks they're wrong and that they're trying to rewrite history. One day, when he can, Mitchell may write a book to set the record straight about the EIT program. Until then, he intends to spend his retirement fishing and kayaking among the gators.